All right. Can people hear us now? Yes. Okay. So we we will quickly redo the intro. Um, Thank you everyone for joining and for bearing with us through the audio issues. Um, Happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We're really happy to have you here with us today for this webinar on business email compromise. Just for background, this session is just a component of our Cybersecure My Business program, which is our small business training program that we run cohorts of throughout the year. It's geared for non-technical small business owners to kind of learn how to manage cybersecurity within their business without knowing how to do the ins and outs of cybersecurity. Um, so today's session is focused on business email compromise. It's the second of the six components of that training course. Happy to provide that to everyone here today. Um, the instructor today is John Elliott. He's our good friend at NCA, our curriculum designer. He teaches all the cohorts. He's a PCI expert, a cyber expert, and a cyber education expert. So you're in good hands with him. This webinar is being recorded, so you'll get a copy of that tomorrow. We also provide worksheets. So every component of the training, there's a worksheet that goes along with it to help you kind of take what you learned and apply it to your business. So you'll be receiving those in the follow-up email tomorrow, along with the recording. And then I'll also include information on the next cohort should you be interested in taking the full training course, or if you know small business owners or small business operators that might be interested in taking the course, feel free to share with them as well. With that, one other thing before I pass to John, Q&A. There's a button at the bottom of the screen. Please submit any questions you have throughout the duration of the webinar. We have built-in question and answer breaks that John will stop and see what's in the Q&A box. And then at the end, we should have time as well to go through that. So just as you have questions, submit them. We'll get to them at some point. And without further ado, I will pass over to John.
That's really good. Thank you, Max. And maybe we should do a Zoom Awareness Month training course rather than cybersecurity awareness training. So, as we're both sitting quite happily chatting to each other in the backstage. So now I'm really optimistic that I've not messed up and you can see my screen. Um, and as Max said, hi, my name's John. So in fact, we'll kick off with the introduction. So yeah, as Max says, my name's John Elliott. I'm going to be the instructor today, and I instruct on the Cybersecure My Business course. Max is the program manager and can deal with any administrative things. And as he said, in case you missed it, you will be sent some documents and a recording of this tomorrow by email. And I also have to start with a disclaimer because our lawyers like us to start with disclaimers that say this is for educational purposes only. It's not a replacement for your professional judgment. It doesn't substitute for consulting or advisory services. And if you need consulting or advisory services, you should get a consultant or an advisor. All statements of fact or opinion are mine. They're not the NCA's, and they don't endorse or anything that I say, which is for liability. And everything we do today is subject to the National Cybersecurity Alliance's copyright. With the bit that our lawyers wanted us to say out the way, then I'm just going to remind you that, as Max says, this is actually part of a 6-week program. This is the second week in the course. And the idea of the course is to try and help people manage cybersecurity in their business. It's not to do cybersecurity in their business, it's to manage cybersecurity in their business. So what I'm going to talk about today is who wants to steal your money and how they try and do it. And the biggest threat to small and medium-sized businesses is criminals. Criminals want to try and steal your money. They also want to try and do other things like hold you to ransom, so you give them some money. But today we're just looking at ways that they actually try and steal your money. In fact, not just steal your money, but trick you into sending your money to them. That's called a business email compromise attack. That's what's the sort of technical term for it. And basically, the idea is that we have small time scammers, small time criminals, and organized crime who want to attack you to get you to send your money to them. And the reason they can do that is because they're anywhere in the world. They can send you an email, a text message, a voice message now, join a Zoom call or a video call, not just to you, but to anyone in your business. You see, when we started, if you can remember the time before the internet, if I wanted to steal something from you, I had to be in the same town or village or state as you typically. But now I can try steal things from you by scamming you from anywhere in the world, which usually leads people to ask this really simple question, which is like, well, but John, can't we just arrest these people who are attacking us? And the answer is no, because often they're in countries where we don't have the ability to extradite them, and therefore we have to protect ourselves. We can't just rely on law enforcement to protect us. And so what I'm going to talk about today is how you can protect yourself. And when we do the Cybersecure My Business training course, in the first week, we talk about this model. I'm going to go very quickly into the model because it's a really cool way to think about cybersecurity. The idea is that we have this model that says somewhere on the internet there is an attacker who's motivated and capable. In other words, they know what they're doing to do the attack that they want to do against you, and they want to exploit some sort of vulnerability in humans or in technology to get hold of some sort of information asset. And today's information asset we're talking about is your money, your bank, your access to your bank account, money in your bank account. And there are two ways, and so when we think about managing cybersecurity, in fact, when we think about managing anything, we like to think about this in a logical way. And so, if we want to stop a cyber attacker being able to have trick us into sending money to them, we have to understand what the vulnerabilities are. Because if we understand what the vulnerabilities are, then we can think about how we can shrinking those vulnerabilities so that the attacker can't attack them anymore. And they're going to say, well, we need to find a different way of exploiting it. Or what we need to do is we need to think about a way of wrapping some controls, some extra technical or process things around our vulnerabilities and around our assets. So even if the vulnerability exists, because we can't always shrink them, even if the vulnerability exists, our threat actor won't be able to do anything. And so when we go through the course for the 6 weeks, we think about these 5 questions. We think, what vulnerabilities exist? How likely is it that someone's going to try and exploit them? How are they going to do that? Is that bad for us? Do we care about it? Should we actually do some cybersecurity to stop that happening? And then how can we stop that exploitation? And also, while we're going through the course, we do these things. We have these terminology checks. So I've used two technical terms there. A control, which is a technical or a process thing that's designed to have some sort of security function. We'll meet some controls in a minute. And a vulnerability is a fault or a bug or a feature in something, but also in someone. And so that's a sort of very quick recap of some of the stuff we do in the first week, so I can talk about how we fix these people-centric attacks. And let's talk about let's talk about people-centric attacks generally. Generally, as we've discovered, one of the vulnerabilities is that anyone in the world can send an email or a voicemail or a text message or contact anyone in your organization. And the second vulnerability is in us, in humans, because when we're processing email, we get so many emails and voicemails and Slacks and chats and Teams messages. We tend to do this in a very automatic, perhaps sometimes unthinking way. And we can also be too trusting of what we see on the screen in front of us. So those are the vulnerabilities, that anyone in the world can send us emails, and that as humans we can be a bit trusting, and sometimes we don't think hard enough when we're processing emails and other sorts of messages. And the people who are doing these attacks, I call them scammers. They're not technical. They're not the sort of person that you see on iRobot, getting their computers to hack into your computers. They're just very good at making plausible sounding emails or voicemails or ways to scam you. They're not that technical. What they are good at is at tricking you. Um, and to give you some sort of context, last year the FBI reported that these type of business email scams, those scams that start off with someone outside your organization sending someone inside your organization an email or a text message or a Slack or something, cost American businesses, in terms of reported, there was $2.7 billion of crime reported. That's $2.7 billion that people lost money on. And That's seen to be an underreport. So the FBI estimate that it's about $14 billion that American companies are just willingly sending to these scammers, to these criminals. And hopefully in the course of the next 40 minutes, oh, we started a bit late, the course of the next 30 minutes, that we will help you protect your organization from some of these attacks. And remember, these are not technically sophisticated attacks. The attackers don't hack into your systems. All they do is they trick you or trick your people into sending your money to them. And you're thinking, no, we wouldn't get tricked. And believe me, lots of people who've been tricked thought we wouldn't get tricked. So actually, it's really important to think, well, maybe we would get tricked. Maybe someone in our organization would get tricked. Because if you think like that, then you could think about, well, how we can stop that happening. And the three attacks I want to talk about today, the three business email compromise attacks, are what we call the gift card attack, the CEO secret project attack, and the supplier bank account switch attack. Going to go through each one individually. A lot of the things we do to stop these happening are the same. So you might hear me say the same thing three times. But hopefully you'll understand then why these are really great defenses for you to adopt in your organization. So let's start with the gift card scam. And the gift card scam usually starts with an email that looks a bit like this.
There is something I need you to do. Can you get this done now? I need $100 in Apple gift cards to send to a customer. I promised we'd provide a prize for their annual raffle. Please get the physical card from the store. I need to send them out in less than an hour. When you get the cards, scratch out the back to reveal the card codes and email me the codes.
So it's an email that comes in that says to someone in your organization, I need you to get me some gift cards. This is quite focused. Often they start off more like this.
Hi, Alice. Are you in the office? I need you to handle a project. Very busy at the moment. Can't talk. Just send an email when you receive this.
You can't
Thanks.
Cut talk's very important because the scammer obviously isn't in the office and on the internal phone system. So it's like, oh, let's do all this by email. And the idea of the scammer is to get someone to go to the shops, to go to Target or somewhere, get some of those gift cards, load them with money, and then rub off the code at the back and then send it to the scammer. Then the scammer can use those gift cards to buy something that they can then sell. And so here is the model. The threat actor exploits the vulnerability in a human to not get access to your information assets, but to get them to send you, to get them to get a gift card, and then they're going to be expected to be reimbursed by the company, and that's when the company can lose money. And remember, there are two things we can do. We can minimize vulnerabilities and we can add controls. And so if we look at the vulnerabilities, we think to ourselves, well, like how would we make it so that anyone in our organization didn't fall victim to this scam, that they didn't think, oh yeah, my new boss is typically a new boss, has just asked me to go and get some gift cards. I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to get these gift cards, and then the company will give me the money back. So the vulnerability is that they're unprepared for this type of email, they're trusting and believing, and that they're humans. Well, we can, as a business, we can make it really easy for them to be prepared for this type of email by training them. We can make it so that they're less trusting and less believing in emails by having policies and training courses. Like a policy might be something like that we would train is that at this organization, no manager will ever ask you to buy gift cards on the company's behalf. And you might think to yourself, well, that's a really simple thing to do. And you're absolutely right. But if a lot of organizations did this, this gift card still wouldn't work. And then we might have also, we'll think about this in a minute, a policy for how we deal with requests for reimbursement. So we might also want to have some technical controls. We might go to our IT department or our managed service provider or whoever looks after our email, and we might say to whoever looks after our email, hey, can we add some filters to our email system to make sure that these type of emails can't come through? Most email systems have the ability to do this, or sometimes you've got a separate email security system or it's built into your email server. If you're using Google for email or Microsoft 365, it's built in. You just often need to turn it on. So we might add some technical controls, or we might also add a process control. And the process control would say, when we tell people that like any personal payments that require reimbursement have to be approved by your line manager before the expenditure is incurred. So if somebody thinks, oh, not my boss, but the company boss has asked me to do this gift card thing, oh, but I need to get my line manager's approval. And if you're thinking, hang on, John, you said this was about teaching us to manage cybersecurity, not to do cybersecurity. And that sounds like doing cybersecurity. You're sort of right. Because actually, what we talk about on the course, and what I want you to think about, is that we know that these vulnerabilities, that the human is unprepared for this email, they're trusting and believing. And so, what I want you to do in your organization is to ask yourself these three questions: is to say, as an organization, what policies do we have that would stop this happening? What training do we have that would stop this happening? And also, how soon after joining a new starters trade, because often criminals will look for people announcing, hello, I've got a new job. You know that thing on LinkedIn that comes up that says with a little, it used to be an aeroplane, but now it's just changed to something else. But like you see this thing on LinkedIn of like so-and-so's got a new job. That's really exciting that so-and-so's got a new job. And then the criminal actually on the first day messages them saying, hey, we've not met, but I'm your CEO. So the other thing that we have is some good answers to those questions. So if you're asking the question, what policies do our organization have? A good answer is the policy for the organization to reimburse payments that have been made personally is that they have to be pre-approved by your line manager. And you will get in email tomorrow a summary of all these good questions to ask, and also a summary of all the good answers to have. So you don't have to don't worry about making notes for this as well. The second thing is like, what training do we have? Well, the training is we train people in the reimbursement policy. We train them that these scams happen, and the training specifically mentions gift cards because the word gift card should be a red flag. And then how soon after joining a new hire is trained, they should be hired, really, as I said, really quickly. Scammers look for that new role post on LinkedIn and maybe have a short test to validate they've understood it. And then some systems that you subscribe to might let you send your colleagues test emails to check them out. So that's the really important thing. Is that those are the three questions to ask yourself, and remember, you'll get a copy of these questions and the good answers. And then, of course, the next thing is that how do you know if this is happening? So one of the good things to have in an organization is understanding how people can report this to you. Like, hey, I just got one of those gift card emails. Does somebody want to know about it? Because one of the things you can teach is a positive behavior rather than a negative behavior. People find it much easier to do a positive behavior. And the positive behavior is not go out and buy a gift card or because we don't want that. And we don't want a behavior that just says, oh, ignore this email, because that's very hard for people to know that they've done the right thing by ignoring something. So one of the things we often teach in organizations is actually to have a positive behavior, which is to report the cyber-related error or concern. So they should have some way of being able to report cyber-related errors or concerns. Often you might find a report phishing button in your email client. You might just forward it to the help desk or to a special email address. But if you can have something positive that people have to do rather than just ignoring an email, it's actually you get a much higher response rate. So one of the good questions to ask in your organization is, how do people report cyber-related errors or conditions? And the good answers are they've got a report phishing button, they have an email address, or they call the service desk. And then the other thing is like, well, what do we do when that happens? And this depends on the sophistication of your organization. In some organizations, you could say, well, all we're going to do is let the person's line manager know they reported it, and so they could say, well done. Sometimes your security operations team can look for similar emails in other people's inboxes and then say and take them away. Sometimes you forward that email to everyone and say, hey, look, we got one of those gift card scam emails. Here's what they really look like. So but remember, the important thing is to get people to do something positive when they receive a scam email rather than just ignoring it, because they don't know if they've done the right thing if they just ignore it. But when they report it, you can re-emphasize and reward that positive behavior. And again, we can add those technical controls to make sure that those fake emails don't get into your organization. So the questions to ask is like, what controls do we have in place to stop fake emails? And the good answers are that you block things that look like they come from your domain. You've got an email security system. And some email systems, Microsoft does this, can actually put a warning on there that says, well, this said it came from John, but John never sends you emails from this address. So again, we've got something we can do for minimizing the human vulnerability. We can minimize the technical vulnerability. And then the last thing we can do is we can add those process controls we talked about. And the question you need to ask in your organization as a manager is say, well, what is our reimbursement process? And the reimbursement process is that it hopefully follows policy, and that the line managers, that you must have a line manager's approval before you know that you'll get reimbursed. And this will also stop a lot of these attacks. Now, one of the things we probably should have asked ourselves is do we care about this? Like, is this something as an organization we care about, or should we just like let people go and buy gift cards and then not get reimbursed, or sometimes get reimbursed? The answer, if this was a training course and there weren't 100 people on it and there were just 20 of us, we'd have a chat about this. The answer that everyone usually gets to is yes, we do care about this and we should do. And I'm going to just take a quick pause and see if there are any gift card related questions in the Q&A. Some great comments in Q&A, which is that, yes, scammers are really convincing. They research your company, they research your organizational hierarchy. It is hard to work out what's real and what's not real. One of my things I say is, look really clearly, if it says gift card, it's not real. And yes, security things do add friction. And so you have to balance the friction with whether you're happy for this thing. That's why I asked this previous question. Yeah, you have to think: is it worth adding friction here, or is it not worth adding friction here? Because if it's not, if you think, well, we don't mind we're happy to lose $50 a month on a gift card scam, then don't add that sort of friction. And the last question was like, is there a list of websites or places scammers go? LinkedIn is the big one for business to business scams. Obviously, when people talk about Facebook as well, then the scammers will try and look at Facebook as well. But for these type of scams of working out who works for an organization and then who their manager is and what the format of the email is, and that when people start new jobs or when people move departments, LinkedIn is the one that scammers rely a lot on. I want to talk about the second scam that's really common. This will surprise you, and you might think, "Wow, no one would fall for this." But remember that figure, $14 billion. The CEO's secret project scam is a really big one, and again, it usually starts with an email, which might be very convincing.
Hi, Bob. I'm working on a top secret project that no one else in the company knows about. We're about to make a significant acquisition in India. I need you to urgently make a wire transfer of $25,000 to our Swiss law firm. The account details are below. We need the funds for a deposit, so please do this as soon as you get to the office. We don't want to lose this deal. I know this is unusual, but don't tell Hector about this.
So the email comes in, it comes to someone in the organization. It's often to the finance director or someone in the finance team. And it looks like it comes from the CEO or some senior person in the organization. And it's a top secret project and they can't tell anyone about it. And they have to make a wire transfer. Okay. And so that's the scam. And you might think, well, no one would do this. Like the biggest scam I heard about was like many millions of dollars, where the scammers actually even did fake video on a Zoom call to persuade the person that they were the real people. So again, we look at our model of a threat actor exploiting vulnerabilities, getting to an information asset, which is your bank account. And the question is like, well, who's the threat actor? It's a criminal. They might not be highly technical. They might be highly technical. They're happy to make $100, but they're happy to make $1,000. They send a fake email to someone in the company. It looks like it comes from the CEO. The vulnerabilities are again the same as before. They're unprepared for this type of email. They're worried about letting the CEO down. They're excited to be involved in this secret project. Like, oh, I was chosen for this project. Okay. So there's an emotional twist here, which is why people do it, and they're human. And then on the course, we would ask, I can't do it on a webinar with all of you here, but on the course, we talk about what's the impact of the company, what's the impact of the individuals, is there something that we need to worry about? And generally, people say, yes, we need to worry about something. And so the question is, well, what do we want to do? How can we minimize the vulnerabilities, or how can we stop the exploit by adding some controls? Uh, and 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 if we look at our model of the exploit is sending a fake email and the recipient's not prepared and they're worried, you'll probably already come up with some answers based on the gift card scenario of like, well, we can make them prepared, right, by having training that says this happens. We can make them prepared, but it might come to the CEO and it's not the CEO. And that even if it did, we would have policies that they'd have to abide by, even if someone said it was the CEO. And yes, to answer one of the questions, right, is that one of the issues is that we are about to add friction, okay? And the question is again, is this friction worth it for how much money we can lose on the scam? So having the training and the policies doesn't seem to me that we're adding too much friction. Making sure we've got the technical controls in place to try and stop this thing coming in through our email system doesn't seem like we're adding friction. But this absolutely, the last thing we do adds friction, which is saying, hang on, like, we don't have secret payments in our organization. Everything has to be authorized by two separate people before it's being executed by the bank. If that's our business process, too right, that adds friction. But given the amount of times that scammers have had someone in your organization send money by pretending to be the CEO, it's probably a safe thing. And you might again be thinking, hang on, John, you're teaching us how to do cybersecurity again. Go back to asking the questions, which we will do. So as a manager, what do we want to do? We want to be able to minimize these vulnerabilities. We want to make sure that if our recipient's not prepared for this type of email and they're worried about letting the CEO down and they're excited to be involved in a secret project, right? We need to ask in our organization, what policies do we have in place? What training do we have in place for people who make payments? And so the first question, what policies do we have in place, is that all money transfers must be approved by someone other than the requester, because two people are more likely to spot a scam or a trick than one person. It also stops that don't tell anybody. Because if I said to you, oh, it's appeared to come from the CEO, but it said don't tell anyone, but I had to tell you because you have to prove it. So now neither of us can tell someone. The other person might say, I think this might be a scam. We should probably look into it, right? Because two heads are better than one head. The second thing is, like, what training do we have for people who can make payments? The good answers are they're trained. They're trained in these type of people in finance are trained in scams, and they're trained in our financial controls. And then the next question is like, okay, so if this happens, how do people report it? Because again, we want to try and report that positive thing. So how do people report cyber-related errors or concerns? Again, hopefully your organization has a way of doing that. And again, hopefully you've got a process and policies that are in place when somebody does report, hey, I got one of those secret CEO scam emails, right? And then the next thing is like, well, okay, are there process controls we can put in place? So what I said was we should make it so that we should add some friction so that all payments must be authorized by two people before they're executed by the bank, right? And so the questions you need to ask as a manager are, what approval processes are in place for authorizing payments in our banking or accounting system, and can they be overridden and changed? Right? And so if you've got a process control that, and I have this for my bank account for my business, that I can create a payment, but somebody else has to go and release the payment. So we have two people who have to be involved in that. It's called dual control. So that even if I ignore the manual process that said you have to get somebody else's approval, even if I go into the banking system and say, okay, I'm going to make a payment, somebody else has to approve it, and we'll say, what's this $25 million we're sending to Switzerland? What's that for? And so the question you want to ask yourself is, what's the approval process, and can it be overridden? And hopefully the answer is no, because if things can be overridden, the criminal will attack the person they find out who can override it. And we have seen email chains where the criminal has said to somebody, "Look, remember the criminal's pretending to be a senior manager." Oh, and the person who got received, I'm like, I can't override this. I have to get somebody else to do it. It's like, okay, let me email Fred, and then I'll ask Fred to help out as well. So the criminals will try and work out how to override these type of controls. And then finally, the question we've asked that question before on the gift card scam is, what are the controls in place to make it look like emails that come from outside look like emails come from inside? Is there a way of stopping that? And again, so the good question we ask ourselves is, what controls are in place in our email system to stop faked emails? And again, I'll have a very quick look at the Q&A. I can see lots of people are transferring really writing really useful comments as well. So I'll try and summarize some of those as well. And so that's a really good comment. I think it's Gemini, which is like, from another training, it said you should never forward phishing emails around the company because people might click on the links. You're absolutely right. You could forward them as examples, but you take out the links that somebody could click on. Or as the Gemini says, send it as a screenshot. But they're really good ways of educating people, because people don't think that these things really happen quite frequently. But Gemini, you're absolutely right. Take out anything that somebody could click on. And Jose or Jose, depending where you are, I'll get to your question at the end of the webinar because it's a more general one. Okay, let's look at the third way, and this is the most common way that the criminals get someone in your organization to send your money to the criminal. And it's called the supplier bank account scam. And again, like the other two scams, it starts with an email.
Dear accounts payable, we've changed our bank account. Please remit all outstanding and subsequent invoices to the new account.
So very clearly, your accounts payable team get an email that says, hey, we're a supplier of yours. We've changed our bank account number. So like any money you send us, can you send it to the new bank account? And of course, it's not really your supplier. It's someone pretending to be your supplier. You then send the money that you owe your supplier to the criminal. The supplier doesn't get it. You still owe the money to the supplier. You lose the money. So again, who's doing this? It's often a small-time criminal. It's also, by a small-time criminal, like one or two people working in cohorts. It might also be organized crime who will do some research on this to try and make this quite a sophisticated attack. Again, someone's happy with $100, someone's happy with a few $1,000,000. They send the fake email to someone in accounts payable. They make it look like it comes from your supplier, and sometimes it actually does come from inside your supplier. Why does it work? People in accounts payable are used to doing this. It's part of their job. They're very trusting of email. They're human. They might be busy. They might be thinking. We all have bad days and good days. It might be a day where they get lots of requests in and they just process it. When I say it might be organized crime, so small-time criminals tend to fake emails. They try and forge them, and also sometimes even leave voicemails saying, hey, I'm the supplier. They'll do their research, but they don't do technical things. They don't try and break in. Organized criminals can be actually clever. They might do the research, and then they compromise your supplier's email system, and they actually send you emails from the supplier's email system. And if they've compromised your supplier's email system, they often have what I call trust-building things in there. They might say that, this is the current account balance, or we did this work for you last week, to make it sound more like it's coming from your real supplier. Again, if this was an actual training course, there were 20 of us on the course, not 100, we'd have a chat about, like, what's the impact to the company? Do we care about this? We care about this. This is how most funds are being siphoned out of American and European organizations by scammers. And so remember, when we think about how do we fix this problem, we can either minimize the vulnerabilities, or we can add technical controls, or as one of the questioners said, we can add friction, we can add grit to the process. Remember, the vulnerabilities are people in accounts payable are used to doing this. They're used to making these changes. It's part of their job. They're trusting of email, and they're human. We all make mistakes. We can all be busy. We can all be tired. We can all be tricked really easily. And so what are we going to do? We're going to add controls. We're going to minimize vulnerabilities. What questions do we need to ask? Well, let's look at what questions we need to ask. So remember, the vulnerabilities that the recipients used to making these changes. It's part of their job. They're trusting an email. And so the first thing is, like, do we have a policy that protects us against this type of scam? And then how do we make sure that accounts payable team members understand this is a really common scam, and therefore they comply with the policy we have? And so the good question is, in terms of a policy, is do we have a policy? Yeah. The policy should be in your organization that every request must be verified by telephone to a number that you hold on record for the supplier, and preferably with a known contact at the supplier. And yes, this adds friction. And the reason we have to add friction is if we don't add friction, it's very easy to be scammed. Just accepting the email is why this scam works. Taking a phone number from the email that says, oh, this is my phone number, also doesn't work because the scammer will answer the phone and go, hey, yeah, this is Acme Supplies. Absolutely, we've changed our account number. The second question to ask in your is do all requests have to be checked by two people in accounts payable? And again, we're adding friction. We're adding these controls. A good answer is yes, because it is a tedious process to do this, to say, okay, we've got a supplier bank account request change. This is a common way of us being scammed. I'm in a hurry. I'll just change the number. I won't ring them up on the number that I've got to look up in my directory. I'll just accept it's okay. And so on something like this, the policy needs to say two people need to check this, and they need to sign off that they've checked this. And then the second thing is, the second question as a manager you need to ask is, how do we make sure people understand the risk and therefore they do comply with the policies? And the answer is, we have to give them regular training and talk about it when we do their end of year appraisals or when we do their one-to-ones, because this is the most common attack after the two I've talked about. Gift cards is reasonably common. Supplier secret projects is reasonably common. This is the most common. And then the second thing is that can we put a process control? Can we have a process control at your bank, in your banking system, that says when an approval process is enforced by banking, like when we want to change a bank account number, can it be like we're making a payment that one person changes it and somebody authorizes it? So is there an approval process when we change a bank account details that it can be initiated by one person and changed by a second? This isn't a very common feature of banking accounting software. It's a very common thing that two people have to approve a payment. One person makes the payment, one person requests the payment, the second person makes the payment. But this isn't common for like just changing an account number. And I also want to say something, that it is not just suppliers. When I was running information security for a large organization, we had a brilliant one, and I've got time to tell you about this. Someone in payroll got an email that looked like it came from the CEO, and the CEO said, I can't use Workday, which is the system we use to like manage personnel. But can you change? I've changed my bank. Can you change my bank account number? And the person in payroll was thinking, oh yeah, I could do that for the CEO. It's the CEO asking me, don't I feel special today? They picked me out, and they did change the CEO's bank account number for the CEO's payroll, maybe a week before the payroll run. And then, because they were really pleased that they'd done this for the CEO and the CEO had asked them, they told their boss and they said, oh, I just did this for the CEO. And luckily their boss went, "Hmm, that might not be real. Let's check it." And it wasn't real, and it was a scam. So you should also train people in payroll that this might happen to them. And then also, if you're doing any big funds transfers for real estate, to lawyers, for mergers and acquisitions, for a big professional services bill, if you're putting money into escrow, anywhere where you're transferring money, I always recommend that you verify it by telephone to a human you know on a telephone number you know, because there have been lots of cases, especially in real estate, where people buying property thought they were sending money to the realtor or to the lawyer or to the right place, and actually the scammer had got in the middle of the email conversation and changed the bank account number. So it's not just suppliers. Suppliers is the most common, but it goes to anywhere where someone could trick you into sending your money to the wrong bank account. And again, I'm going to have a quick look at the Q&A. I don't see any new questions. So I hope that was really useful in terms of the big three scams that criminals use to try and get people in your organization to send your money to the criminal. They're not hacking into you, they're just tricking the people who work with you. One of the problems with tricking the people who work with you is afterwards, those people feel really rotten. And so it's really actually not very motivating. So as well as losing money, you have some human recovery to do. So, um, We have a worksheet. Every time on the course, you will get a worksheet, and you will get in the email tomorrow. You'll get the worksheet for this week's course, and the worksheet runs through all the questions that I just asked. Right, the good questions to ask. And on the worksheet, there's space for you to fill out the answers. Now, this worksheet's for your own use. I don't want to see it. The National Cybersecurity Alliance don't want. No one wants to see this worksheet when you filled it out. But this is for you to go through and think, okay, I spent an hour listening to what John said. He told me I should have these things in place to stop these scams. What do we have? And so I'll just take this one as an example. So, what policies do you have in your organization for reimbursements of strange expenses? And you might do some research and say, we don't have anything about this. And then the next question is, well, as a manager, are you okay with this? It could be yes or it could be no. And if you're not okay with it, then as a manager, what are you going to do? You could look at my good answer, or you could think of another good answer for yourself of what you're going to do in your organization. And then the worksheet asks you to put in a date when you want it to happen. Now, you don't have to do this, okay? But my experience is that everyone who works through the worksheet and then also might go back to the recording of the course to see what I said about it, uh, gives themselves a to-do list at the end of the week that says, okay, I could actually make there was four. I could make four simple changes in my organization that would mean we were less likely to have this scam. And I think those changes are worth the friction that comes into the organization because of them. And so you'll get this worksheet tomorrow. You could just put it in the bin, or you could complete it and think about things you want to change in your organization. Because remember, the aim of the Cybersecure My Business program is not to teach you to do cybersecurity, but to teach you what you need to know to manage doing cybersecurity. So you can manage cybersecurity and get other people in your organization to do cybersecurity. It's a course for managing cybersecurity. There are a lot of information on those good questions and answer slides. I know some of you have been rapidly trying to write them down. Don't worry. You will get this good question and answer reference sheet tomorrow. This will be sent along with the email, along with the link to the recording. But here are the good questions and answers. I just want to remind you that this is an educational session. This isn't advice for you. This is not consultancy. If you want advice or consultancy, you should get this from somewhere else. But if this helps you think about how you manage cybersecurity in your business, that's the aim of it. I've now reached the end, and I am going to check for any questions. So please put them in the Q&A chat. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to answer some questions. A great question from Jemmy, which is like, if you get a spoofed email or even a real email from a supplier and the supplier's been hacked, can you still report it? Or does it mean that now we block those type of emails? No, the reporting won't automatically block things. When it goes to reporting, a human hopefully will look at it and work out, is this something that we need to block, or is this not something we need to block? So that's a really great question. And I've answered that. Right. Jose, you asked a really great question, which is, what's the most valuable transferable skill someone from desktop support can bring into cybersecurity? I started my IT career on a help desk. So this is really quite key to me. I think the most valuable skill you have is listening to your colleagues who are using IT and trying to understand their questions and understand how they use applications and how they use software, and how a lot of the messaging we give them is very confusing. The more human-centered and human-focused you can be as a cybersecurity professional means that the way you do cybersecurity is much more intelligible to the people in your organization where you're helping them be cyber secure. So the most valuable transferable skill you have is listening and treating people like humans and understanding how people in your organization use the applications and systems in your organization, so that when you want to ask them to help the organization by doing cybersecurity things, you're attuned into how they work. The other thing is you understand if you stay within the same organization, you understand how your organization works and how the infrastructure work and the systems. And that's a really valuable skill because people don't need to, when people new people coming in, don't have to pick up those skills. RJ, I'm going to come back to your question about adding friction. So you're absolutely right that if we add too much friction, right, then people create workarounds, and then you've got no security. So how do you take care of this? You do user-centered human design. I run a whole course on this, not for the NCA, but there's a webinar on YouTube of me doing an RSA conference. But you need to think about what friction am I adding? Will people work around this? Because you can't just tell people to do stupid things to be secure, because you're right. They get frustrated. They come to work to do their job. They don't come to work to be security professionals. We can ask them to do a little bit of security. And so what you need to do is have human-centered security people on your work stream. I work as a consultant for some companies. Some of those companies make me do their security training and make me use terrible user interfaces and authenticator apps to prove who I am. It's really poor. So yeah, the way we can work around this is to make sure that you have human-centric designers whenever you're designing a security process or sending emails out to your organization. I can't respond to hands in the air. So if you've got something to say, please do type it into the Q and A. Let me also stop sharing the screen so you can see me and also see Max. Because Max, you probably want to wrap up as well. I've answered all the questions that were. Thomas has asked. Thomas asks, are there any tools that enable the easy capture and distribution of suspicious emails? Ways to engage? No, just get them to forward stuff to your help desk. Or you can often get tools that give you a button in Outlook or your email client that when you report the button, it will forward it to someone in the IT team. But then, as we said earlier, let's be really careful about making sure that we don't include links. So take a screenshot or actually take away the link that's in the phishing email. Jeff asked a really great question. You often get text messaging phishing. Any best practice on educating staff about how to deal with it? Again, it's part of your training. It's part of your training program to say this will happen. One of the really important things that training programs miss out is they often tell people what to do, not why they need to do it. So, like, be very careful about saying, actually, this is what happens. You'll get this type of message. If you see a message that says, "Let's move this to WhatsApp," this is a really key phrase to look for because it's scamming. So, training is probably the best thing you can do. And what's the best and most effective way to detect a phishing email? I believe it is. I believe it is to train your people for the emotional triggers that are in phishing emails. I use a thing called a CUTE. So, is there a call to action? Is it time sensitive? Is it unexpected? Um, does it create an emotional response? Um, and so you're not trying to teach them to like hover over the email address or anything like because that's hard for non-technical users. What's easiest to say is, did this create an emotional response for me? Is there some stupid time sensitive thing in there? Um, that's probably more likely phishing than non-phishing. I think we're in a really terrible. Sorry, it's going to be hard in the next 12 months. We're getting better at using AI to detect phishing. The criminals are better at getting better at using AI to make more convincing phishing emails. So I'd invest in training and I'd invest in tools on your email gateway so that people do not have to see as many phishing emails. But teaching people to spot the emotional cues in phishing is what I've always found helps them be able to report phishing. And then remember, the most important thing is to give them something positive to do. Don't click on don't click on something. Like we click on emails all the time. The important thing is, yeah, if you see it, suspect it's phishing, click on that report phishing button and then reward that behavior. Max, we've got 4 minutes, so I'm going to hand over to you to close us out.
Sure thing. Thank you, John. So yeah, that concludes what what makes up module 2 for the training course. As mentioned a few times in this presentation, we will share out the recording, the worksheets that John talked about, information on upcoming cohorts. You'll get all of that tomorrow in the follow-up email. I'll also put my direct email. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Very happy that so many of you joined this session. And again, if you know small business operators or owners, or have them within your supply chain or your stakeholder base, feel free to send them over to us. We're happy to try to help get them trained, whatever it may be. So, open line of communication. Feel free to reach out with any questions. We'll follow up tomorrow. Thank you again for attending. Thank you, John, and happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month.